If you're looking for one of the best credit cards you can get your hands on today, this is it. The Capital One Venture X card is a powerhouse of a card that hit the market 2 years ago this month. And as someone who's had the card ever since, it's been a major MVP in my wallet throughout that time, helping me earn over 380,000 points, which has been used on redemptions like multiple business class tickets to Asia, as well as earning me hundreds if not thousands in value from all the other valuable perks and benefits. So what makes this card so special that is worth the hefty $395 in annual fees? First, the card gives you a pretty easy way to get at least that amount in value every year, with not only its 75,000 mile bonus, which goes as high as 90,000 given the right targeting links, but 2 major credits including the $300 travel credit towards their Capital One travel portal and $100 worth of venture miles every anniversary year. In fact, even though I have tons of credits on my other cards, I found that the credits on the Venture X card are by far the easiest to use. Not only is the Capital One travel portal smooth and has modern UI, but it's also the portal that's given me prices closest to that of Google. For example, if we take a look at a few routes on the same dates, if we look at Seattle to New York, the prices are pretty identical. If we then take a look at flying over to Asia, again, pretty much identical. And then a flight over to Europe, say Paris, again, pretty much identical between the two. And that's only flights. You could also use this $300 travel credit towards other forms of travel through the portal, like hotels, car rentals, and even towards their premium stay selection, where you'll get perks like an experience credit, breakfast, upgrades, and better check-in and out times, similar to that of the programs on Amex and Chase. It's also worth noting that before, this credit was applied as a statement credit at the end of your cycle, whereas now it's actually applied during your checkout process. Personally, I've been using this credit over the last 2 years towards shorter flights where using points or trying hard to find the steepest discounts wasn't really viable. And that includes flights for our entire group when hopping between cities in Europe on Vueling, or for my recent trip, hopping between cities in Southeast Asia on AirAsia. Now, by going through the portal, you're not only benefiting from amazing tools like price predictions and alerts, flight price drop protection, hotel price matches, and more, you'll also benefit from earning a ton of points, and one of the reasons how I was able to accumulate so many points. And that's from earning 10 times miles on hotels and car rentals, or 5 times on flights when booked through their portal, and 2 times back on everything else. And that's another big reason why I like this card so much, is because I treat it as my main catch-all card, where I'm getting 2 times miles for all of my spend, no matter the category or how much I spend. Meaning if I'm spending outside of those typical categories like travel, dining, or others, where my other cards don't cover, then I'll put it here on my Venture X, getting 2 times miles on all of those purchases. Yes, if you redeem these miles towards straight cashback, then you're getting a pretty poor rate at 0.5 cents per mile. But when redeeming for travel through the portal, or, and this is a big or, redeeming towards travel purchases you had outside of the portal, you'll be getting a pretty solid 1 cent per mile. For example, looking at some of my recent travel related purchases, you see that I have a Hertz purchase, which was for a car rental, makes sense, falls under travel, a train ride in Korea, MRT in Singapore, and this headout.com, which if I remember correctly, is actually a site that gives me tickets towards attractions. So I guess it's travel, not entirely, and all of these redeemable with miles at 1 cent per mile. So given how broadly you can redeem these miles, 1 cent per mile is a pretty strong floor, and is also where you get the $100 value with the 10,000 miles you get every anniversary year. But given how flexible these miles are, similar to American Express or Chase, there are several other ways you can redeem these miles, with one of the most important ones being through travel partners. This is where you take your miles on the card, transfer them to one of Capital One's travel partners, and redeem through those programs in hopes of getting even more value. And personally, I usually target at least 2 cents per mile here, which would then pin those 10,000 miles you get every anniversary year at a value of $200 further increasing the value you get from these credits and making the card even more worth it. And even 2 cents per mile can be considered low, depending on your lifestyle and how you decide to redeem these miles. Now, I'll link a couple videos down below on how I redeemed over 700,000 points and miles at a value between 3 and 5 cents per mile. But let's take a look at some examples that are available as of the time of this filming. So this is the entire list of Capital One travel partners, and even though there are about 18, not all of them are equal. One of my favorites is actually here on Aeroplan, transferring over at a 1-to-1 rate. And once you've transferred over to there, because Aeroplan and Air Canada is part of Star Alliance, you get access to all the other airlines as part of that network, with standout ones being ANA, Asiana, EVA, and Singapore Airlines, 4 world-class airlines that fly routes over to Asia. So if we do a quick search over at seats.aero, say flying from SFO over to Asia, you'll get an entire list of available flights for about 75,000 points, because Aeroplan is based on a distance award chart. If we scroll down, let's take a look at this flight from SFO to KIX Osaka. If we click into it, you'll see that you could fly direct on United Business Class or have a layover but fly on Asiana, arguably a better airline. If we then click into it to double check on Aeroplan, you see that there's indeed 3 seats flying direct on United, or 1 seat if you're flying through Korea. If we then go back to seats.aero, scroll down, we can also see this flight from SFO to Singapore, which costs more points at 87,500 points because it's in the next bucket of distance. Again, checking the set itself, and indeed there are 2 seats left. But how do these compare? If we take a look on the EVA side, a one-way flight from SFO over to Taipei would cost you $3,528. But for a more accurate read, let's take the round-trip cost, which is $5,445, then divide by 2, giving you $2,722.50. Subtract $56, which was the cost for the award booking, and you get $2,666.50, which means that values those 75,000 points towards the booking at 3.56 cents per point, which gives you a fair buffer above the 2 cents per point target. If we do the same on the Singapore side, it's $10,267 divided by 2, which gives you $5,133.50, which if you subtract the $56 fee will give you $5,077.50. Divide that by the 87,500 points, and you're getting a value of 5.8 cents per point, which is a lot more buffer above the 2 cents target. So as you can see, if you're traveling international, as long as you're flexible and put in a little bit of work, there's a ton of opportunity for you, especially if you follow some of my lesser known tips in the video up above. And similar redemptions can be found more locally in North America too. Taking a look at Vancouver to Toronto in mid-December, which can be had for 11,000 points in economy or 23,000 points in business class, that can be compared to a round-trip ticket in economy for $620, or say a one-way for $310, giving you a value between 2 and 3 cents per point. Or flight in business class for $1247 divided by 2, that's $623 each way, also giving you about 3 cents per point in value. This is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of redemptions, but with flexibility and a bit of work, all those great redemptions are out there. Now, speaking of flying, what better way to spend time at the airport than to chill at the amazing lounges, especially the ones with great food and great atmosphere? Well, in my opinion, the Venture X is one of the best cards you can go for when it comes to lounges, because it gives you and 2 guests access to Plaza Premium lounges, as well as you and unlimited guesses towards Priority Pass lounges. But because you can add authorized users to this card for no extra charge, each of those authorized users can have their own access as well as access for their own guests. And the additional access towards Plaza Premium instead of just Priority Pass is also great, because at least personally in my experience, the Plaza Premium lounges are a notch higher in quality and have better food and just are more modern. When Priority Pass lounges could be a hit or miss, more on the miss side when it comes to the domestic lounges, but international, they're a lot better. Then there's your brand new Capital One lounges meant to rival Amex Centurion and Chase Sapphire lounges, with a few currently open in Dallas, Denver, and Washington. I haven't had the opportunity to visit one of these yet. In fact, I haven't visited any of those 3 cities in my life, but I do hope they bring these lounges over to the West Coast. In terms of value, I think a good average across all of my visits would be pinned at $20 per visit per person. And especially with the amount of travel I've gone through this year, it's easily $100, $200 in value at least. And that's even with my other cards like the Amex Platinum having access as well. Because there's only 2 guests for the Plaza Premium lounges, I had to use both cards in order to get my entire group into these lounges. So having multiple cards with overlapping lounge access can be beneficial if you regularly travel in bigger groups. So we talked about the credits, the multipliers, and the lounge access, where just those things alone is already enough to justify the $395 in annual fees. But I've gotten even more value out of this card, and that's through the Hertz President Circle status for car rentals, offering increased points, the widest ultimate choice selection, a dedicated line, and most importantly, a guaranteed upgrade. In fact, in Honolulu, there were different areas sectioned out for different levels of status where you can just go in, choose the car you want, take the keys, and then go check in. Having this upgrade towards the car that I actually wanted saved me about $90 towards my 4 or 5 day trip, and could save you even more depending on how long you're there for, or if you have any other discounts already. Combined with a primary auto rental collision damage waiver, you can decline that offer from these car rental companies, saving you an additional $30 per day, which for my 4-day trip is already $120 in savings. And so again, throughout my 2 years with this card and renting cars several times, it's already saved me a few $100s there. Next, and this isn't specifically for the Venture X, but a benefit of Capital One is that you can request for a credit limit increase once every 6 months. No, this is not so you can max out your card even more, but it's to increase your credit limit, which in turn actually increases your credit score over time. And that's because with a higher credit limit and the same amount of spend, you have a lower utilization ratio, which accounts for 30% of your credit score. I've done this once before that bumped up my credit limit from $30,000 to $33,000, but it's been more than 6 months, so let's go through the process now, especially when these requests do not affect your credit score, given they're soft pulls, not hard pulls. Now, if you look at this form, it's pretty simple. Having your total income, which is a major factor to see how much you earn and how much you spend, employment status, occupation, as well as some of your major expenses like mortgage or rents. It'll also ask you how much you plan to spend on this card each month and what limit you're aiming to get, along with a reason. So I'll go ahead, fill out this form, and we'll see what happens. And approved. I asked for a $40,000 limit and it was offered exactly that. So I'll go ahead and accept, and I'll have this credit limit immediately. Again, this does not affect my credit score given it's a soft pull, but may actually help my score over the long run. All right, now when it comes to additional benefits, we've already covered the free authorized user, which is amazing to see, especially when some competing cards like the Amex Platinum now charge $195 each. But there's also cell phone protection, protecting against damage or theft for your cell phone, up to $800 per claim after a $50 deductible. There's also the prior subscription, which is like some destination travel guide, which I've never used, and the Cultipus giving you access to 50 to 60 different museums around the world. This is something I wish I had kept an eye on earlier because I could have used it while traveling around Europe last year and saving money towards these museum entrances. But it does look like they've refreshed the list and includes museums across the UK, France, Germany, Italy, and even here in the US. Then if you got this card around the time it came out, it also came with a $200 vacation rental credit. Now, if you did get this credit, double check if it actually posted, because for me, when I was looking through my statements, I saw that it never actually credited me the $200. I actually had to contact Capital One recently, get them to check it out, and they finally credited me the $200 a year and a half later. So if you're one of those people, go on and check your statements. Now with that said, how does this card compare to the current competition? namely the American Express Platinum card and the Chase Sapphire Reserve. Well, if you can make use of the coupon book of credits on the Amex Platinum, then that card is probably best for you, especially if you want the best of the best when it comes to all of these travel perks. And it's a card that's worth it for me given I've had it since 2018. If you like pure simplicity, then this Venture X card is up your alley, given there's two pretty simple to use credits to help offset that cost every year, while still giving you some amazing travel lounge benefits. If you're somewhere in the middle, like the multipliers on the Reserve, or use a lot of those partner benefits, then you might want to consider the Sapphire Reserve. Personally, my setup consists of the Amex Platinum, given I am able to use a lot of the credits every year, the Venture X as my catch-all card, and then the Chase Sapphire Preferred to continue some exposure in the Chase ecosystem. And so will I be keeping this Venture X card for another year? Definitely yes. But that might not be the best option for you. So go on and check out this video for an in-depth comparison between all of these cards. See you over there.